広がる懐かしの地よさらば遥か遠き知らん。
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at the Locust IIC, and I had someone asking like, why didn't you create a special intro for Clan Mongoose? And then I looked at the guy and asked like, okay, tell me 4 other mechs from Clan Mongoose. And then he went away. That's basically it. Clan Mongoose is one of the dead clans, and it's been dead for quite some time now. They had quite a few issues with the other clans, and the production of the Locust IIC didn't stop with them being gone, as Clan Jade Falcon really liked it, and well, to be honest, everybody really liked it, because you always need a scout. So let's get into it. The Locust has been around in Battletech warfare since the early 26th century. Bergen built so many of those darn things that they're a common sight throughout the Inner Sphere and beyond, and you've got factories all over the universe building them. I have a feeling that if we start digging and we go further out in space, we'll find some lost Terran colonies with factories building the darn Locust. The Star League did have a massive amount of Locust, and during the devastation of the American Civil War, well, it didn't stop them. They kept buying them and kept fielding them. And they had a massive inventory of them during the Exodus as well, even though they preferred to bring their things like their Mechwarriors and their Mongoose with them, as the Locust was, well, you know, still a basic enough mech. But did it need to be anything more fancy? That's really the thing with the Locust. It's not fancy, it works, and it's darn cheap. Amongst the clan, it was really the Mongoose who liked the Locust the most and decided to start revamping the whole series with the 2C and 2832. The Mongoose were an odd group within the clan. They liked to fight dirty, raiding, doing the scouting in force, basically what the Inner Sphere has been doing during the Succession War, but they were doing it in clan space. The improved version of the Locust fit their MO to a T, so they began mass-producing them on the shared world of LocustIIC and selling them to various people as well because, well, as I said before, everybody wants a scout. And, well, replacing the original Locust and Mechwarriors and Mongoose was probably a good idea. They were getting a little bit old, and the technology on them was, well, out of date. Them not playing by the rule did lead the Mongoose to get exterminated by the other clans, with Clan Smoke Jaguar picking up the slack in the production of various machines on LocustIIC because they inherited the various factories there. Even as Omni-Mech warfare took center stage, the Locust IIC still carried on. The 2 replacement Omni-Mechs for the Locust IIC were the Firemoth and the Mistlings, but they both clocked at about double the production price in terms of equipment. The Locust IIC is still a damn dirty, cheap machine. Often enough, a simpler and cheaper scout is preferable to an expensive one because, well, you will probably be losing them, especially when performance generally match or are close enough. The Locust IIC is fairly quick, it doesn't jump, it is able to do a little bit of brawling and a little bit of fighting, it has decent armor, so I mean, if you look at comparatives between the Firemoth, the Mistlings, and the Locust IIC, if you take out the fact that those 2 are Omni-Mechs, I would probably go with the Locust IIC in many situations just because it's easier to field. It was Clan Jade Falcon which became the standard producer for the Locust IIC in the Inner Sphere after they took Olivity weapons on Sudeten 4 for their own. Most of the other clans had a good chunk of these bad boys running around, the Wolves using them as scout and raider, even in the recent Battle of Terra. Some people might find that a little bit weird, but, you know, the Locust IICs are very, very common, they're very, very cheap, they're easy to salvage, and even Clan Jade Falcon and Clan Wolf with their frequent disagreements, well, getting a trade of a few hundred Locust IICs for a couple of good Omni-Mechs is, you know, not out of the question. Bergen on their side also wants to recapture the production of these bug mechs, meaning that they've started replacing some of their old Locust production lines with production lines for Locust IICs in the Rasselague Dominion in order to field the Rasselague Dominion's military and especially second line units. The Jade Falcons will not be getting up and mean with Bergen because, well, Bergen is still a much bigger organization than even Clan Jade Falcon. You'd have to start looking at just the size of some of those corporations. Your original Locust IIC from 2832 is a 25-ton machine, so 5 tons heavier than the regular Locust, which uses a 200 Fusion engine to get a speed of about 130 kilometers per hour. It is quite nimble and quite efficient. It is easy to work on, it's easy to maintain, it's got the low profile of the earlier Locust, but the leg assembly is a little bit weaker on a lot of them. This is an original model one. You can tell why the legs might have some issues if you start kicking people with them. Still, the body is made of endo steel. It's protected by 4 tons of ferrofibrous plates, so it's quite decently protected for a mech its size. Of course, compared to anything bigger, it's not going to be a threat. But I mean, if you're fighting other bugs with it, it's going to work quite well. The whole mech assembly is fairly easily cooled by 10 double heat sinks, which gives it more than enough coverage compared to the original, even though it has a all-energy weapon setup compared to the machine guns you normally would have on a Locust. Your main gun is a medium pulse laser on the top of the head mount rather than under the chin, like on the original Locust. That's where you would easily distinguish the two models. Each arm mounts a quartet of ER small lasers, giving you a massive amount of punch at fairly short range, but is a little bit more limited in terms of fighting infantry compared to the original Locust. This thing is meant to scout and fight other mechs and armored vehicles. When against infantry, you should be using other mechs, like the Piranha as an example. Clan Jade Falcon are the ones who introduced the Mark II in 2837, trying to make it a little bit more specialized. Your main gun is now an ER medium laser, which will give you a pretty good engagement range, and you'll probably outrange anything other scouts from the inner spheres would be able to bring to bear. The bulk of your firepower, though, comes from 8 tubes of SRM, 4 in each arm, in a 2x2 setup, which means that you're going to have devastating firepower against armor, VTOLs, and later on battle armors. It's not as accurate as if they were streak SRMs, but you're going to be able to put out more firepower with it, and you're going to be able to use some specialty ammo, which is pretty useful in this type of setup. Clan Jade Falcon followed suit with the Mark III in 2853 once they took control of the factories. The main gun here is replaced with an ER large laser, giving you an annoying fast sniper that you really can't afford to ignore in the long run. With the weight being put in the main gun rather than on the supplemental weapon, each arm now mounts a single small pulse laser, which is going to be deadly against unarmored infantry. The second SLDF did learn the hard way that this would be a pretty nasty fellow when they were going in their fight against Clan Smoke Jaguar. The next actually recorded version of the Locust IIC came from Comstar and their recon with the Mark V, which started coming out of Clan Wolf's factory on New Oslo and on Satellis. The main gun returns to an ER medium laser, which is still quite a reasonable weapon on a scout mech, while each arm now mounts a 3-tube of advanced tactical missile with a ton of reload for each. You do have to select your ammo a little bit, but you're going to be able to bring a whole lot of pain with it. This design did fall into the hands of Clan Ghost Bears later on, and they even made a version using Inner Sphere MML3s instead of the ATM3s, just because you can load them up with quite a few different forms of specialty ammo. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that setup, but I'm pretty sure if you test it out, you'll probably find ways of using it effectively. Clan Jade Falcon decided to start building new Locust IICs on Sudeten in 3064. Their new model went back to having an ER medium laser as its main gun, which is perfectly reasonable in my book, and then stuck 12 double heat sinks on it. Well, why would you need that many heat sinks, you ask? Well, each arm now packs 3 heavy small lasers, improved heavy small lasers if you're looking at a modern version of this, giving you a titanic amount of punch for such a small mech. You're going to be able to basically disintegrate other light mechs and probably be a pretty big threat against other mediums and even probably some heavy mechs if you're careful. Of course, you're going to run crazy hot. That's why you have that many heat sinks. So do be careful if you're piloting this particular model. The 3075 Mark VI is built so you can take care of those little riots that you end up having at home. I mean, the inner sphere has a lot of infantry. That's what I mean. So that's why you would need a mech to be able to fight it. The Ed still mounts an ER medium laser. I mean, they could have stuck a small pulse laser on there at this point to make sure that you really just kill everything that is breeding in front of it. But each arm now packs 3 heavy machine guns, allowing you to basically mow down infantry like you would wheat in late summer. You get an extra half ton of armor in order to make sure that you're able to stand around rioters shooting at you and throwing Molotov cocktails at you, but it's not really a design that I would bring into a full-on firefight. The Mark 7 basically follows the same kind of line and came out in 3076. Rather than the basic machine gun, this one mounts the more fancy AP Gauss rifle, but with 6 of them sharing a single ton of reload, you probably won't be able to stay in the fight for too terribly long. What you will gain, though, is a massive amount of range compared to a regular machine gun, and you'll be able to threaten quite a few more things, so it evens out in the end. You keep the ER medium laser, which is always a good thing. I really enjoyed that type of weapon. And to make sure that everything is going to hit when you shoot it, it all is tied to a targeting computer, which I think is the biggest advantage of this particular model compared to the previous one. The Mark 8 is a bit of a crazier design and decides to take the Fast Land Scout model and turn it to 11. The engine is replaced with a fairly common, however, 300 XL engine, which is quite massive on a 25-ton mech. This gives it a top speed close to 200 kilometers per hour, which is comparable to your Firemot, which uses a mask to get these kinds of speed. All this costs you, in the end, is that you have no other weapons than an ER small laser in the top mount. You are going to be able to spot things, and you're going to be able to tell people where things are, but you're not going to be able to fight your way out of a paper bag. This is what I don't really like about this particular model. Same thing with some of the UST scouts that are available out there. It's a bit of a trade, and I'm not sure it's a good one. But that is not the end of the crazy. Clan Jade Falcon went all out with their Mark 9 using an experimental 350 triple XL engine. Well, double XL actually. Let's not say it too big here, but it also has an XL gyro, so that's why I added an extra X on there. You can go up to 225, 230 kilometers per hour, but it also costs about the same as a trinary of regular Locust IICs. Your weapons are limited to a pair of improved heavy medium lasers, which is actually pretty darn good. The armor itself is made of inner sphere heavy ferrofibrous because it actually gives you a little bit more protection than standard graded clan ferrofibrous, so you take that little bit extra that you can, and you get a laser anti-missile system to round out the defense. It's not bad altogether, but it's going to run quite a bit hot. And, well, with an engine that big, like I said, you are going to basically pay for the price of an entire trinary of regular Locust IICs for something only okay in the long run. Not sure this is a trade that a lot of commanders want to do. The newest official version of the Locust IIC comes from the Wolf Empire and the people at Corian, actually, which is a bit weird because Corian is not one of them that is really well known for building a whole lot of Locust IICs. The biggest difference in this case is that the body is now protected by 5 tons of reflective plates, which is really nifty, but means that if you fall down, you're probably just going to break your entire Locust in a single go, so you do have to be a little bit careful walking around. Your main gun is that ER medium laser, which is perfectly reasonable, and each arm feature 4 ER small lasers, which gives you a great amount of punch at medium range. Fighting a Mark 10 against another Mark 10 is going to be very unpleasant because everything's reflective on there. And if you look around, well, reflective armor is getting more popular with some groups that are going to be fighting against the Wolf Empire and other groups associated with them. So you do have to start thinking about bringing those re-engineered lasers every once in a while. If you want something that's decently expensive, well, you can look at the Sea Fox's newest variant, or at least Young Industries' newest variant, that I think he did sell out to the Sea Foxes. Well, basically, this is a beast that uses a 250 XL engine to get speeds up to 162 kilometers per hour, while the armor is replaced with ferrolamellar, so you can absorb more different types of hits. The centerline gun remains an ER medium laser, while each arm feature a pair of small pulse lasers to take care of infantry and a variety of other threats. To make sure that everything is super accurate, you get a targeting computer mounted in the head or a C3 slave, depending on who's ordering, basically. This is not an official Mark 11 just yet, but I've heard that it's getting a little bit of traction just all around. You rarely go wrong with a Locust IIC. Outside of the Mark 8 and the Mark 9, all the other ones are fairly affordable, easy to fix, you can easily source just about everything for it, and they will do the job just right. The original Locust is a machine that will probably never disappear just because there's so many of them and everybody and their brothers and sisters end up using them. And I have really the same feeling about the Locust IIC. People do need a simple, easy to use Scout and Striker, and all of the Locust IICs basically fit that bill, with some being a little bit more specialized and some being able to do a little bit more support roles. But in the end, they all fall in that very useful category. So I thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.